Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another episode of Infection Podcast. We cover the very interesting, everly more blurred line between the video game industry and the modern political scene. My name is Nick Craig. You can give me a follow on Elon Musk's amazing Twitterverse at Nicholas M. Craig, or check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. Joining me by the hair of his chinny chin chin, Brian with an eye Aldrich. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I am doing very well, and luckily in video today with looking mostly like it would. I had my motherboard. I don't know if I assume it's my motherboard that died. I tried changing out. So I got additional memory because I knew I was going to upgrade my memory. Mm-hmm. So I bought the second, 16 gigabytes or whatever, or 32 gigabytes for that. And actually, another 32, so now I'm at 64 gigabytes. That didn't fix my issue. And then I changed it out, a different power supply to make sure it wasn't that. So ASUS support's going to be probably, I assume, RMA me my replacement, or having me send this in and fix it. It's very new. I mean, it's within 6 months old.
I was going to say, because you've got what specs is this? This is an AMD or an Intel board?
It's an AMD Ryzen 9 style,
okay, yeah.
And I've heard that there's some sort of a bug that was in the AMD chips that were frying
specifically with the Asus boards,
Asus boards, and they've put out a BIOS patch supposedly to mitigate it. I was current on my BIOS, I always check that stuff, and so I don't know how in the world it happened, but they should swap it out, and hopefully I'll be back up and running. This will work temporarily. For what I need to do, because it has everything, got the green screen, using the same mic, so this will do for now, but hopefully I'll get my computer back soon.
Yes, sir,
because it's kind of annoying not having a computer.
Absolutely. Where can folks find you online?
Well, if you want to find me at Boise Computer on Twitter, or at Brian Aldrich on Gab, Getter, Truth Social. Of course, you can check out my blog, biteoftech.com, as well.
Excellent.
All right, so where do you want to jump in first? I know we've got some interesting things happening in the world today.
Yeah, let's start off with Steam. This should be a pretty quick and simple conversation.
Yeah.
Here's a pretty cool headline, and it's over at Eurogamer, and it's actually something that's happening right now. So the old days, Brian, and you being the elder of the program, probably dealt with a lot more of trials. That used to be a common thing. These magazines you'd get, and they'd have trials of games. I briefly saw that with Xbox Magazine when I was really young, and since then, game trials really haven't existed. Yeah.
Well, one interesting thing, I still have it. I saved it. Is the original Quake trial. So they had the original Quake trial, which had all the different versions of Quake, Doom, everything they had up to that point on there. And then people made and you could put in a key. So people made a generator that, they had on a floppy disk. They could generate a key and they could unlock any of the games on the stupid CD. But the other interesting thing is the soundtrack was in CD form, because they didn't do MP3s and things like that. So it had a 9 Inch Nails soundtrack that you could play on a CD player in your car. On this demo, and then it had every single one of their games that if you had this little unlocker, you could install any of them on your computer. It was crazy what they used to do. I just thought it was funny how open it was.
So Valve has introduced apparently a 90-minute game trial to Steam, and the first game that it's been introduced with in its inaugural thing, they didn't do it, but no big fanfare or anything about it, is the Dead Space remake, which came out a couple of months ago, and apparently if you maybe, let's see, it's not showing up on the website. Maybe it's just in client. Let me open it up. But it will show a little button to try the game for 90 minutes. Which, some might argue they kind of already had a free trial anyway, because you could always get your. Oh yeah, look at this. Check this. This is
you get a refund.
Get your refund. Of course, I can't zoom in on the Steam page, but this is. You can see it down here. This try Dead Space free trial, and I guess if I clicked play now, it would install it, and then after 90 minutes, it would likely
Lock
boot
you
me
out
out.
of
Yeah, boot me out, and then tell me to buy the game. This, again, this is something that was very common in the 90s and through parts of the early 2000s, and with digital games, it kind of drifted away. It's not really a thing anymore. I don't know the
shareware
last
packs.
yeah, it just doesn't exist. And with so many free to play games, of course, you don't need a trial for that. It's free already. This is cool, and I hope that they can I hope that they can get more companies to come on board with this program, because that's super cool to have this just built right into the Steam launcher. I think this is great.
And I think they probably, in their statistics for certain, they have how long people play a game on average and either become bored with it or drop it because it wasn't what they expected. Personally, I think an hour and a half is a good amount of time to measure whether or not you're going to enjoy the game. Hopefully all these studios just don't start making their first hour and a half the game amazing, and then after that the quality just drops off really fast. But I would think that with this, it gives you a good enough idea to know, is this something that I'm going to want to play? And maybe with this, do you think that they're going to perhaps draw back on their whole refund policy a little bit, saying, hey, you have the opportunity to play for an hour and a half to decide if you like it or not, and be a little less open with their refund policy?
Yes. I hope, and I kind of hope they do. If they're going to offer you a 90-minute free trial of a game and you play 2 hours of it, you buy it and play 2 hours of it and try to return it, I could make the argument that, yes, you had an opportunity to play a free trial. You should have used that. Now, it kind of makes more sense in single-player games like Dead Space, like the new Doom games and things like that. It's going to be pretty tough to do on a multiplayer game, and I'm not sure that it even makes sense for a multiplayer game. But for any single-player game, I don't know why this wouldn't become the norm. So this is pretty neat. No fanfare. Not even really a press release, just like it just kind of popped up. And so if you're I'm going to try
see if it sticks.
I'm going to try the Dead Space game. I mean, why? Here's the great thing, Brian. I think you and I are pretty similar in this. We're not buying a lot of new games every year. We're just maybe a couple handful. I don't even know if the handful might even be too much with all the free to play stuff. You could get me to spend, and the game's on sale right now for $47. I might not spend that much, but I get an hour and a half into this, and I'm like, damn, this is sick.
If you're hooked,
I am. Oh, damn it. Well, I guess I'm gonna buy it now. To me, this is a huge rep, because here's the thing, Brian. I'm probably not going to even. By the way, the Dead Space franchise is great, and by the way, this game has got 92% of its 23,000 reviews on Steam are very positive. So people are obviously liking the game. Then the whole franchise is just great. But this very well could sell tens of thousands of copies more of individual games, just because folks have the opportunity to actually try it out. Who knows? Maybe I fall in love with it after an hour, and I really had no choice but to buy it.
Yeah, and it takes away that risk from the. That's the big thing for me, is it takes away that risk of getting a game that was all hype and did not deliver on any of the promise.
Yeah.
Because
and here's the great thing.
A 5-minute thing is just going to get you into the intro videos and things like that. An hour and a half will get you past all the intro into an actual, you're on the ground doing something.
If I'm not jazzed after an hour and a half, I probably know that I probably know it's not worth buying. If I'm hooked to the screen and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need more, well then of course, then I'll buy it. So this is a pretty cool feature. I'm sure it'll start rolling out on some other stuff. We'll keep an eye on it and let you know what the next games are. But right now, the new Dead Space from January of this year is available for a free trial. So check it out. No strings attached.
Hey, I've got some GameStop news. I know that,
I saw
what I remember.
I got an email about this today.
You sold your stock in it, but hey, there may be a chance that they're coming back, and this is something we keep talking about. When are they going to do something to kind of reinvent or keep things going? So what they're going to be doing is overhauling their rewards program and raising its price. And that's that card that you can get. I have the basic one that I don't know if it's the free one or whatever.
Power up rewards.
The price is, yeah, Power Up Rewards. They're changing it to GameStop Pro. So Power Up Rewards is becoming GameStop Pro, and it's going from $15 to $25 a year. But you get bigger discounts on collectibles and pre-owned games. And that's the way to do it. Give the people that do this some sort of a bigger discount than I don't remember. For me, I looked at the rewards and it just wasn't worth. I don't purchase enough things at GameStop to justify paying extra money, for the one or two things I buy a year from there.
Yeah.
So, but this would be the way to do it, is figure out what it is that people feel like they're getting a really good deal on through you, that you have the ability to make some profit on, and make it act like it's a perk that you get it at a cheaper price than people get that thing everywhere else. Like, I don't know. That's to me feels like what would make this a winner, because people are starting to buy digital games. They're starting to buy things on Amazon, or now, as you've told me, Walmart has almost the identical program for getting the same prices and things, and they'll match shipping and do all these different things to match what Amazon will do and what GameStop will do. So they're going to have to keep reinventing it. And hopefully they come up with something that makes it to work. Because I like having a GameStop on the corner. I have one that's a half a mile away or so from my house.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate having that, to where I can, if I need to go and grab something, maybe my controller the drift is getting weird on my controller, or it's just stopped when the buttons isn't responding how it's supposed to. I like being able to run down and grab a controller and not have to wait a day and a half or a day for Amazon. I know,
well, if you
first world problems, but honestly.
Well, if you decided tonight that you were just hell bent to play Breath of the new Zelda game when you were going to bed tonight, you could, obviously you could buy it digitally, but if that wasn't an option or whatever, yeah, that's the thing. This to me seems odd. I think a lot of people may have just been keeping this my concern with this is that at $15 a year, this wasn't $15 a month, this was $15 a year. You may have had folks that were like, yeah, whatever, I still keep this subscription going. I get my Game Informer magazine, whatever. You're now raising it from 15 to 25, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's almost a 50% increase. That at $25, you might go, all right, I'm not actually using this thing at all. I was willing to just kind of keep it rolling because it was $15. Maybe I'm not at 25, because now at $25, Brian, you're close to halfway towards a AAA. Well, what used to be a AAA title at $60, or any sort of game like the Dead Space game we just talked about. I mean, you're halfway to purchasing the Dead Space game at $25 a year. So unless you're actually using the Power Up Rewards, you'll probably cancel at 25. That's approaching the limit where it's like not worth paying for if you're not using it.
Well, now one thing is that they're offering some additional discounts. So 5% off of pre-owned games, 5% off of collectibles like Pokemon cards and all the other things they have, 5% off product warranties, which I don't really care about, 5% off clearance items, and 5% off the GameStop brand gear and accessories, like PC accessories. So you'd have to be a person who buys a lot of stuff to make 5%, or buy big things. Maybe 5% to me just doesn't seem like a huge amount.
It's not. That's not even sales tax.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like enough to really entice me to go, because I don't buy, say 5% off everything in the store. Maybe, but
they can't afford to do that.
Things
and that's the problem, is they can't afford to do it. So, they use these examples, and it's like, so 5% off a $30 game on the shelf, instead of it costing you $34, Brian, it's going to cost you $31, because it's not even going to cover 7.5% sales tax, at least what it is here in North Carolina. So it's just like, and 5% is great when you're spending $1,000, because it's I don't know, a couple, $50, whatever. It's some amount of money. Yep. It's not when you're spending $18.
Pokemon cards,
5% of $18 is literally pennies. I mean, it's just not even an amount of money to move the needle. So maybe this is an attempt to get a bunch of people on their auto renew and generate tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue when it automatically renews, and people go, shit, I forgot I was still subscribed to this. That might be what they're doing in this as well. Apparently the GameStop subreddit, which I can only imagine is a cesspool, are apparently full of people
Surprised you're not a member.
claiming, no, not a member. Apparently they're furious with the overhaul, mostly because of the 66% price increase and the fact that the points apparently will automatically expire. So this is a cash grab for people that just have the automatic subscription. And it's an interesting couple comments I was reading while you were talking is, this guy comments, a company in decline charging their most dedicated customers more. And then they switch you to auto renew. And it's like, yeah, that's right. The only people that have a Power Up Rewards card are the loyalists. And now you're fucking them by raising the price to $25 and essentially giving them not much of an addition. They already had a 5% discount. It's only they've added more items to it. So I don't know. This is super lame. Super lame. Thanks, GameStop.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure they'll change it again here in the next 6 months. I think they're trying to figure out what's going to keep them afloat.
Yeah. Here's a pretty interesting story, Brian. This ought to send the libs on the Twitter gaming sphere to hell and back. Microsoft won't give salaried employees raises this year. Wow.
Yep. And
now it's not just
they're going to say, look at how much money. Yeah.
The CEO,
well, exactly.
no staff, no salaried employees getting a raise from the CEO
and
down to the bottom level employee.
That shouldn't be a huge surprise. We've been covering the state of the economy here week after week, I feel like. And if you look at certain companies, I know Micron, which is a local company here, from what I remember, they're not giving bonuses, or I don't remember if it was salary increases or bonuses, whatever it was. They're not doing that. I'm sure a lot of places are realizing we could give bonuses, but we're going to have to fire this many people to make it work.
Yeah, I had a thing. I work for a large radio conglomerate. It's not really a surprise, but we visit our website, and normally around they don't do. It's such a. We have thousands of employees. It's something like 6,000 or 8,000 employees. It's a very large company across the country. And normally they do like a couple $100 bonus between Thanksgiving and Christmas every year. And you might get $150 in your paycheck and think, well, that's not changing my life. Maybe for some people it is. But take $150 and multiply it by 6,000 employees, Brian. It's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And this past go around, they didn't do that. Instead, they gave us an extra PTO day, and of course, a lot of people were griping and moaning about it. But this is the reality of tightening the belt. These are all symptoms of a fluttering economy with way too much spending out of control and seemingly nobody willing to rein it in. This is the result. You can't have free play money constantly and then be like, oh my God, shocked Pikachu face. Nobody can afford to pay their companies a bonus. No shit. Nobody's got any money. Inflation was at 9.7% less than a year ago. Yeah. Nobody's got any money. Except for the oil companies and the billionaires, according to Joe Biden. And everybody else is broke, though.
Well, one interesting thing that I've been noticing a lot is, and this is kind of a side of this, is a lot of these companies are starting to implement AI into their tools. And I really think that's going to take out that low-level employee, the employee that's doing work that's not super complex. One of the products that I work with, that's the primary tool I use for my main client right now, announced today that they're implementing AI into their tool, which is going to do a big chunk of what I do, for them. And it's going to automate a lot of the process. Well, I mean, that's fine with me. But for a lot of the people that maybe don't have the ability to do more than what that tool is doing, what's going to be the point of what you do? Like, that person is going to be somewhat redundant, because instead what you're going to do is pay someone who's a little bit more skilled, who has the ability to go in and look at that AI and what it generated and make sure that it all makes sense and isn't doing something bad. Because that low level employee wouldn't know if the AI is really doing something it's not supposed to, because they don't understand enough about programming or security or whatever it is. That's my concern, is these companies are going to realize with AI, we don't need this bottom 25% of the company. And that'll be a way that they start making money back, is getting rid of those low level employees.
I'll say this. I know we're going to talk about
You,
AI in
you,
a little bit, but
yeah, the testers and we had talked about those testers all the time. They're one of those.
I will say this, and all of this stuff needs to be viewed within the realm of what we're in right now. And Brian, I would say to your point about the bottom people, you could have made the same argument about the same argument was made about corporate America 25 years ago with the advent of computers. Oh my God, we don't need typists. We don't need
shifts, right?
We don't need it always shifts. We don't need what would they be? Dictators and note takers to literally follow executives around and jot down everything that they're doing. Now they have a cell phone that does that. They don't need it.
Yep.
So I mean, that you don't have typists at companies. You don't have copywriters at companies anymore. Those are not positions.
But we're in the moment where we have those people that are sitting there saying, "Well, what am I supposed to do now?" Remember the people who got banned off? Well, who knows? YouTube. They say learn to code, like that whole learn.
Yeah,
to code. It was getting you banned off of Twitter and who wherever else. That is the true answer for some of these things. Instead of learn to code, it's like, learn whatever it is, the AI we're going to have to learn how to manage, learn how to verify, whatever it is your job ends up being for the AI. You're going to have to learn to do something different because like the people that are doing the testing for video games or the testing, all these different forms of testing, for the most part, AI is going to do it better. And so there's going to be a lot of jobs that I think AI is going to wipe out. But if you're willing to learn new things and be on the cutting edge, just like computers were, it opens up a whole new area that you can branch into. But you have a lot of people that were the typists that have no interest in computers back in the day, right? The people that were the mathematicians that were doing the calculating that then were taken over by computers, because the calculator used to be a person, right? A person that was calculating numbers. And then it got taken over and became a machine that did that. And now we don't think twice about it. Well, that took somebody's job. I mean, are you going to get mad about it? Well, if you didn't get mad about the person who was doing the calculating getting taken over by a calculator, don't get mad about this.
Well, here's the thing: they don't get taken over. Yeah, they adjust, they adapt, and they take their skill set and they apply it elsewhere. I mean, you could go back to when the hell did the Gutenberg press come out? The 13 or 1400s, where now we don't need to physically copy literally everything by rewriting it by hand.
Word,
look at this guy. He's got a.
I mean, look at all the jobs it took out.
I mean, it's just at any generation in any progression in history, there is always this. There is something that kills jobs, and now I will admit, and I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but I will admit that there is a certain point, Brian, where a computer is doing everything, and that is a problem, and that's why there's this big push for...
There's oversight. That's why I say there needs oversight, because AI by itself can do crazy things.
Yeah, but you've got this, there's this big push for, universal basic income, because there won't be any jobs
because
left.
Of AI,
the government will just pay you to sit home and do nothing, which they already do if you're whatever. So that eventually be the concern, but I don't know that AI... I can say this very clearly. AI is not going to be any more revolutionary to the workforce than computers were. That's not even close. What computers did to the workforce through the 80s and
in
90s,
such a short amount of time.
It's AI is not even going to come close to that. I don't know, clip that and maybe I'll be completely wrong, but you went from everything being done physically and email, physically having to mail stuff around to being able to send it electronically. It's not even close. So that's pretty interesting. But there's no money. So they're not giving any of their salary employees raises. And I'm sure that causes a bunch of outrage. And you know what my response to that is, Brian? Well, you voted for this, because anybody that's bitching about this voted for Biden. And the reason that this is happening is because of him. So you voted for it. You're not happy with it. Maybe you should have voted for somebody else or stayed home.
Vote a little bit differently next time.
Yeah, no, of course not. Man. No, it won't be that. They'll vote for the same shit and then go, oh my God, I can't believe my company doesn't have any money. This is the worst thing that's ever happened. Speaking of the worst thing that's ever happened, Riot Games. Boy, they're in a world of hurt. China, Tencent owns them, and they're paying out compensation to 1,548 women in what they claim to be what is a gender discrimination case. And this could cost them millions of dollars, upwards of $100 million potentially.
Well, and these payments that they're going to be doing will be ranging from $5,000 to $150,000 per person.
That
Right.
at 1,500, that's a lot of money.
So yeah, so that the initial payment's going to be between $2,500 $5,000. Additional payments could extend up to $40,000 depending on the recipient's employment status and tenure. So this is something where I can't imagine. I've been looking for what they feel like happened. As far as they said that they found that this happened, but I was looking for like the smoking gun. Like, what is it that they said? Is there a certain testimony? Like, I was looking for the thing that made this case go to the women and this numbers, but I just haven't heard. I'm sure that they've silenced everything, put everything behind NDA. But they must have been doing enough, because that's a decent amount of money to give every female employee that was employed with you for a certain period of time.
Yeah, 1,500 of them.
It is pretty crazy.
Apparently, they were just laying off women, like at an unbelievably high rate.
Okay, but what were they hiring them to do? What was the position?
I don't know.
This is the stuff I want to know.
Yeah.
Is where the women tend to be from a certain department that had a high turnover? Is that then being used in court to push something that maybe wasn't 100% accurate? Because you want who else laid off a lot of women? Elon Musk. Just being honest. Does that mean that he was discriminating against women? No, he was discriminating. He wasn't discriminating. He was being discriminating in how he was judging whether or not they were capable of doing the job that he needed.
That's sure. This is a long running case. I mean, this is a 2018 lawsuit. And there's a whole bunch of articles from 2018 that talk about all of these different defendants and the various things that they claim. And a lot of it is some of the similar stuff we see. But the fact that this is this could be $100 million lawsuit and 1,548 people, this is pretty widespread. I mean, I don't know that this is necessarily the boy that cries wolf. Maybe it is, but doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like that's what this case is. I mean, this seems like it may have actually been sexual-based discrimination based on, or gender.
Well, and a lot of a lot of crazy things were happening at some of these studios. So, I'm not saying that it's impossible. I think there was a kind of a Wild West. I came from a time, just think of the early 90s or late 90s, and how different the work culture was then to now. So I've seen it play out.
Well, especially in the computer and tech industry.
Oh, yeah. Where, it was just all men, or
there
was women were the secretaries and men were the managers. And that's just how things most of the time, not always, most of the time laid out. That's very different now. And I appreciate that. But, here, obviously, must have been stuff going on at Riot that was just kind of like the buddy club, or, they were not treating them how they should have.
Yeah, from what I understand about it, there were hiring practices. They were the term that was used in the lawsuit was they were hiring core gamers. So they were hiring essentially a bunch of dudes, because that's who's playing League. When you're talking about a core gamer, and then the claim was that when women were hired, they were promoted within the company, given more and more job responsibilities, and never were seeing increases in pay. You're talking about a significant. I mean, this isn't like 100 people. 1,548 people is a boatload that got in on this lawsuit. Were some of these? Here's the problem with something like this: it casts such a wide net. Were some of these women discriminated against in the workplace based on their gender? Absolutely. But I guarantee you, not every single 1,548 of them were. But because it's a class action lawsuit and anybody can jump in on minus 7 women that backed out of the lawsuit, it opens up the opportunity for people to take advantage of it, even if it's not true. Yep. That's the danger with something like this. Was that discrimination happening? Sure, probably. Yeah.
Well, and one other thing that they've done is they have changed their CEO. So they announced a new CEO as all of this happened as well. And so I don't know, some of this maybe stemmed back to what the CEO was kind of pushing towards managers, or maybe the CEO knew about it, or maybe he's just this person is just a scapegoat that's being let go. And this is just so that they can say, hey, look, we started over. But it's Dylan Jadeja, probably, I assume is how they pronounce their name. They were the chief financial officer in 2011, the chief operating officer in 2014, president in 2017. So we will see. We'll see if there's a change. I'm assuming that they've made some changes because usually lawsuits tend to make that happen.
Yeah. And by the way, it's important to note Riot is exclusively owned by Tencent. They are 100% owned and operated by Tencent. So not that has any bearing on this, but they are they're in large part owned by the Chinese Communist Party. So that's always something interesting. Brian, do we have anything else we want to get to before we talk about AI? We've got a lot of AI stuff in here.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say really quick, China has been making a lot of pushes towards approving games. Remember, they shut down for so long.
Yeah, like
they have
years.
granted approval for 86 domestic online games.
Oh, wow.
So they're opening it right back up again with NetEase and some other developers. I think they probably see how much a lot of these companies are struggling, and this is kind of a time for them to make promises and build some group alliances with companies in a time when they feel like they're struggling, and they can say, hey, we can offer you China. Kind of like the old what happened to H1Z1. I think that this is them. They realized that they were killing all of their gaming industry and a lot of their tech industry. America has been kind of cutting off a lot of things having to do with the hardware side, but they're not with a lot of the software side. So we'll see. They did 86 domestic game approvals. A couple weeks ago, they had 27 that they had new video games, including Tencent and NetEase titles that they announced. So that went from 27
these are
3 days ago
games.
In one imported games. Yep. So these are going to be external titles that they're allowing to now be played inside of China. So who knows? A lot of back and forth with China. I've always tried to kind of figure out what they're leading towards. With this, I think they're leading towards money. I think they realize they need money and they need that industry, and they almost killed it.
So for 18 months, started in August of 2021 and ended in December of 2022, the Chinese authorities did not approve a single foreign video game. Yeah. Not a one in an 18-month period of time. Prior to that, they were approving like 80 to 200 of them a month. They did none for 18 months. So that's pretty wild. They're wildly backlogged.
Yeah, and so those will be opening up, and we'll see if they put a bunch of limitations, because that's always what they do. Is they'll say, like, for instance, H1Z1, you can't have red blood, you can't have American police cars, you can't have all of these things. Hopefully, these companies, instead of doing what some of these other ones have done, they make a version for China, make a version that's skinned for China. Quit of editing the American version to fit the China principles. Because that's the part that frustrates me when they start opening up and letting them in China.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go. So you want to talk? Let's talk AI, because there's actually a lot of interesting things. I wanted to first get some of the stances of these various companies when talking about AI, and Apple is taking more of an extreme aspect, which is understandable, but they're banning employees from using things like ChatGPT and other tools, because they're so worried about internal data being leaked, which is true, because you're kind of training the AI. Yeah. You're sending them data. They're using it to come up with a more customized answer for you. And so it has to take in data and fit it in with the rest of what it knows. Now, if a company AI tool is trying to continue to build their knowledge base, they'll then take what you tell it and over time treat it like memory and keep enhancing what they understand about what you're trying to tell them based on that. With that, you're taking probably confidential information, copyright information, sending it to them. And if they're logging that and storing it, there may be things that get leaked that they don't want.
Now, it is
like GitHub Copilot, which I've been using lately. So I understand because it feeds your source code into their model to sit there and analyze it.
So there's a couple of different things that I think are important with this. The first is, if you are a business that uses ChatGPT and you're paying for it as a business, from what I understand, the stuff that you're feeding into it, things like code that are, proprietary, intellectual property, private information, that stuff is being isolated from what I understand. Now, if you're a programmer and you're just going to openai.org and just chucking code in there, that's not the case at all. If you're on a private AI tool and you're a business, you have an agreement with them where they're not stealing your intellectual property. They're not able to publish that or use it in any other model outside of your own. So that's one thing. Public AI tools, like you mentioned with GitHub's thing and with just regular OpenAI, that's a serious problem. There was a couple of Samsung developers that were using just regular OpenAI ChatGPT, shoving a bunch of code into it, and then the next thing you know, they're like, well, what the hell? Like, and they were using
this code is being returned in results.
yeah, exactly. And that's a serious problem, because this stuff is not only highly confidential, but it's copywritten material. There's property rights on that stuff.
Well, and like with GitHub Copilot, which I've been using it and really enjoying it. That's a tool that will kind of finish code for you, give suggestions of how code could lay out. They're concerned with that one because they say that the data used from AI tools are stored on external servers, because they use that data is used to then train multiple AI models, including those created and operated by other companies. So once you put it into a system like this, you don't know where that information is being taken and trained. Now, I pay for this service. Oh yeah, it's really nice. You can give a description. You start typing something, and it says, "Oh, based on what you started typing here, I think this is what you want to do." And so, it's really nice. I've been using it lately. And it's a lot of the repetitive stuff, because right now I'm writing an API for a fiscal calendar. And so there's things with months and time and all this stuff that you usually have to be like, well, how do I calculate that? Okay, what do I need to multiply this times that? It's like, oh, do you want to do this? And you just got to kind of verify and make sure, oh yeah, that's all the calculations I need. It's really nice.
Yeah. So instead of going to Stack Overflow to
and finding examples,
somebody's example to copy, you're able to do it directly, and it's cheaper than GameStop's a 1 month of this is cheaper than a year of a GameStop's little membership program. Yep. So this is from especially a big company standpoint, where you've got a lot of this inherent intellectual property. This is a big challenge. And I understand why they are banning it. The thing is, though, banning it will end up causing people. Prohibition didn't work. It just caused people to illegally moonshine and then race their cars up the mountains of North Carolina, which created NASCAR. Funny enough, moonshining was people still drank. There was still speakeasies and private bars. The workers, if they are, and especially if they're nerds, they will find a way to use some sort of open AI for something. What needs to be done, like many other things, is instead of banning it, you need to find a comprehensive way to implement it into your workforce. Now, they're starting
an enterprise
with the ban
level or something.
Yeah,
right?
And now I understand why they're starting with the ban, because this stuff is adapting and changing so freaking rapidly. It's like, hold on, let's just, no, none of this, and then we'll figure out, we'll partner with Microsoft, we'll partner with Google or whoever to bring that technology in-house. But these companies have got to be panicking.
Well, and that's the thing, is I think that they'll, for instance, for this tool, and Amazon has one called Code Whisperer, which does something very similar, but they're going to have to come up with an enterprise level of that, to where they can sign their whole company up to have access to it. And then they'll have access to the public model that people can get, but then also a private version that when your data is being fed into it, it's being processed separate and done and put into models aside from what everyone else has access to.
And that's
once they get that to where they can guarantee it's private, then Apple and all these companies will start doing it. Google Bard, I've been testing with that. The thing is, it's not always right. But you can give it a piece of code and you talk to it in a conversation style saying, hey, I'm trying to do this, or here's a piece of code. I'm getting this error. What's wrong? And it'll find the error for you and it'll fix it and give you a suggestion. Now, it doesn't always work, but I've been playing with just seeing how accurate it is. But you feed that into Google Bard, what are they doing with that data?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're not dropping it off. They're not treating it like a VPN service, and all those
No.
logs are gone. That's being stored somewhere. So I think that all of these services are going to have to come up with an enterprise level, because there's so many secrets that can be passed. And that's where, if I get into a code base, I may get into a code base or working for a client where I'm not allowed to use certain tools, because unless it's something that's been implemented separately, because of this exact issue. They don't want that code base getting out. They don't want any secrets that may be in the code, because what if someone's hard coding passwords or passcodes or something into code, and then somehow it's getting into a suggestion for someone else? They need to put in all those protections and guarantee that that's never going to happen. And
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of those protections, and I haven't seen any of the statements saying that this will never happen.
Yeah.
How do you cover against that?
They have to segment that stuff. It's just not an option.
Yep.
Brian, if I'm sitting over here and listening to you talking, I'm thinking, if I'm Microsoft, sounds like another great thing to throw into Office 365. Another tier to be able. Yeah, I mean that
they are. Right, they're actually implementing the what GitHub has for Copilot. They're introducing the Office Copilot, and it's going to help you write, which is perfect, because if I say I want a nice letterhead that is kind of this type of tone, that is, that talks about these type of things, and it'll lay out most of a message of stuff that's just generic and you don't really care. You just need to get these out. That's the perfect use case for things like this. Give me a nice letterhead, because I just need to get a letter out quickly, but I don't want to spend all day formatting it and trying to make it look professional.
Exactly.
But I want to be able to customize it. That's the kind of conversational AI that will be pretty cool too. But the same thing, they can't have it if you're writing a personal letter that has maybe legal information or something that's you don't want out. You don't want that being fed back into the general. They've got to do all the same things. Filter all the personal out. If they learn from the structure, but not the details.
Well,
from all of these things.
And that's why, especially these major companies like Apple and Samsung, they're going to just build their own, because they're not even going to attempt to want to risk that. It's going to be the small and medium size, and even large corporations that just don't have the infrastructure they'll have to rely on one of these other services. But I mean, Apple even says they want to they're working on their own internal tools, because they do not want to reveal or have the possibility of even potentially maybe almost revealing those details to anybody outside of the company. And I understand it. When you're Apple, when you're one of the most wealthiest, second wealthiest company in the world, it makes sense. When you're, a random small business, obviously you don't.
Well, in Blizzard, on the other hand, they say they're very excited about AI.
Oh, wow.
And they want to use it for level design, coding, and what they call anti-toxicity, which we've talked about before. Remember the whole, I know Discord was talking about using it. These are ones that were going to take away hurtful things, so you don't ever have to hear them or see them.
No, not once.
But I think the level design part of it, and this is where with the quality assurance, the QA testers and everything else, I think that this is where you will be able to do that iterative, kind of like what we discussed on the Christmas show, where if you're looking for the bug that's going to make it to where they can somehow escape the world or do something, send the AI on that. Make it to where the AI is finding the little glitches and the things where we fall into the earth. Because how many times have we fallen into a hole in games like Ark, or in WoW? I've fallen into a place where I then couldn't get out of it. That could be a thing of the past, because you could come up with almost every iteration of possibility of what a player could do, and not have that anymore. Coding, maybe you have coding practices and implement things that enforce those coding practices as far as structure and style and everything else. There's a lot of different things that you could really do with this. Now, a former engineer at Blizzard said that they think it's a lot of focusing on hype words that they think will sound impressive to shareholders. I think that may be just a grumpy ex-employee, because I think there is a lot of benefit in programming and these type of technologies, because a lot of the stuff that people are typing in programming from day to day is very repetitive, common things. They're not always doing the rock star stuff all the time.
I'd love to read a quote from you from Alan Adham. He's Blizzard's chief design officer. So the CDO, that's not a good one. But obviously this guy's pretty high up at Blizzard. I mean, if you're the design officer
Yeah.
and you make video games, I'd say you're he's probably making a good chunk of money, and I bet you his job is pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that the tool is already being put to use to generate some concept art for Blizzard projects. Specifically, it's spitting out art for environments and character design. Saying, but it won't necessarily stop there. They talk about using using some autonomous things for things like intelligence for in-game NPCs to procedurally assist level design, voice cloning. These are all things. Concept art is something that AI would do a phenomenal job at because it's concept art.
Doesn't have to be exact.
No.
It doesn't have to be exact, but it gives you some really creative ideas, things for level designers to start thinking about and basing things on.
Dude, I've been using so much the only thing I've been using is Chat GPT, and I've been using it to generate Facebook posts, and this is very rudimentary, but Facebook posts, emails to a large mailing list about events. I'm using it for all this different stuff, and I have been so impressed with how well it's operating. I know I'm at the tricycle level of what AI is possible, but that's the use case that I'm using it for right now because that's what I needed to do, and it's doing a phenomenal job at it. And I'm glad a company like Blizzard, which is Activision, soon to be Microsoft, is looking at this stuff and saying, hey, there is some legitimacy here. He doesn't say that it's going to replace game design, procedurally assisted level design. You'll have a level designer that will map out and tell the AI what it wants to do. And then the level designers will go in and clean up all of the little messes and screw ups. But NPCs, think about having an NPC that is not programmed, that is AI on the fly, not random, which is what an NPC is now. And, it's got possibility of 60 things it could say. It's 1,000,000 things it could say, Brian. Not even 1,000 things. An infinite amount of things that an AI in Red Dead Redemption 2 could say instead of the same 12. That's freaking sick.
And that's the cool thing is, imagine you have a game where you have a companion and you can say to your companion, not a pre-made command, I want you to go to this town. I want you to go to the store and I want you to purchase me this and I want you to bring it back. And then they'll take the coin from you and they'll go do something like that. Not in a way that's you've programmed it in to do that, but because you've done it with AI, it's able to carry out those things. That's going to be a huge step forward in gaming to where you feel like it's not random, as you said. It's not that kind of, we've programmed this to make it feel like it's random, but it's really not. I mean, Red Dead was very good at that, making things feel like it was a natural, spontaneous world. But once you get to true AI and you kind of give it enough, and this is where as technology goes on, you'll be able to create worlds in computer programming and level design and world design and in all the code base to where Unreal Engine is going to replicate very close to what real life mechanics and physics and everything else is. You feed it all the rules and it stays in the rules, and it can come up with like the guy falling off the horse and breaking his leg. And like, I'd like to see what that looks like with not being a pre-programmed and AI creating it. Because that's the kind of stuff that could create in the future. I'm saying 10 years from now, where it seems seamless and it's expected. Like that's the common standard, how a game like this works. Take-Two has been very apprehensive, I think, towards it from what I remember seeing. I have another one here from Take-Two. They said they for them, AI in game development is going to be very limited. And they're talking about like Grand Theft Auto. They think that a person can come up with a much better. Okay, they put the time in and the money in to hire a ton of people to do a ton of things. They may change their tune as they start implementing tools and seeing how much better it is. I think right now they're kind of staying, being cautious and not wanting their employees to be worried about things. But I think that as you go on with these type of things, AI will be the way to do it. Like if you want to create that feeling of what Red Dead gives you, that through another game, that's going to be AI probably doing that.
Yeah, and in regards to can a human generate the dialogue better for a more of a main character NPC? Absolutely, and I don't think that's what we're talking about. But the
You're still going to have writers.
Yeah, yes, but the random guy that you pass in the random trailer park somewhere in Liberty City, is it beneficial to have somebody writing a bunch of random lines for that guy versus AI doing it, or in Red Dead, as you mentioned, the random guy that's fallen off the horse and has broken it. Well, that one's probably something that you want to that you actually want a set number of things for. But for
But I'm
all
saying,
of these
imagine
other
if it could create
characters,
that
yeah,
level of depth.
and it can and it will. So these are two very large companies that have both made very successful games that are taking two very approaches. Now, it is also different when you're Grand Theft Auto and you're Take-Two, when you essentially have a license to print money. Grand Theft Auto 5 is one of the most profitable and one of the most best-selling, most revenue-generating games that has ever existed. I mean, they spend hundreds
And I think in
of
2
millions
years,
of dollars in development.
you see the announcement for the new Grand Theft Auto? I think it's going to come out in 2 years.
I thought it was it 24 or 25? I thought it was 24.
Well, but they were talking fiscal calendar, which I think ends up being 2025, because they gave the fiscal calendar, which is going to end in, I think, March of 2025. So it's going to be in a certain range.
April of next year to March of 25.
There we go. Yeah, that's what it was. So be interesting to see, because that's 10 years worth of change. We got a peek at it with Red Dead Redemption 2, as far as what this may contain. But I think they're going to take this one even farther. This always seems to be kind of the precursor of what other companies are starting to do within 5 years, 10 years, because other games are still catching up with the original Grand Theft Auto. I feel like Grand Theft Auto 5.
Just think about it.
But I think here that'll be interesting to see how they move along and do really cool things that we haven't thought of yet.
Well, so think about it in this way. Go back to the NPC example. So you're playing Grand Theft Auto 5 right now. That game came out in 2012, I think, 2011, 2012.
Something like that, yeah.
How cool would it be that if you're playing Grand Theft Auto 6 in 2030, the game will have been out 5 or 6 years, depending on when it actually launches. And because its AI may be able to be updated over time, the NPCs in the game are able to talk about like current things that are going on. Like, you know what I think about, like bullshit celebrity news that nobody would care about, but would make perfect sense when you're like chatting with the hooker outside of the strip club, when before you beat her with the baseball bat, because that's what you do in Grand Theft Auto. Like, that stuff sounds probably pretty stupid, but when you think about it, like if you were playing that, you'd be like, oh, that's sick. Like, how cool is it that this in-game character is talking about two celebrities that are getting divorced in whatever, or sports, and who won the Super Bowl? It's little things like that you talk about expanding the life scope, the lifespan of a game. You can have technically updated content with in-game things like NPC conversations forever. I mean, it's infinite. And so that to me would be something that I think would be pretty cool. If anybody wants to hire me as a contractor to provide some of this great insight, you can shoot me an email. It's nick@nickcraig.net or nick@nickcraig.com. I'd be happy to provide some of this very useful insight to you and your company. Looking at you, Blizzard.
Hey, there is something interesting that I don't think a lot of people realize. Those AI generated images cannot be copyrighted. The U.S. government copyright office has said you cannot copyright an AI-generated elements. And I can understand to a point because, well, right now most of them are using a lot of copyrighted material to come up with the training.
Yeah.
So how are you going to copyright when you break copyright to generate something? But, our people are using these things. Are they breaking copyright? I think this is kind of they're ignoring it and not treating it like what it really is, which is almost like theft in a way, when they're scanning it with all these open, or images that they're finding on the internet that I can't go and take a copy of and put on my website without paying for it, but they're using it to train something that then can create an identical copy of it.
Oh no, dude! It is
like IBM.
It's not. Yeah, it's 100% theft. These companies like Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, these AI art services. I know somebody that uses Midjourney in work, and they use it for very basic mock-ups, and they've been very happy with it. But these services have done a huge disservice to actual artists with their learning algorithms, which is essentially suck in everything that has ever been published online and learn from it, including Getty Images and Associated Press. And some of these companies are finding themselves in some super hot water because you don't screw around with Getty Images. They will sue you for everything that you've got.
They tried. Okay, so
business.
they tried to sue. Yeah, they tried to sue me for a picture of a dog that was on a website that I made for a veterinary clinic. Now, 10 years after I made the website, they tried to sue me for that. Well, they went after the. Well, yeah, I think it was a Getty Images.
I'm sure it was.
Where, and they sent a letter saying we expect like $20,000 or something for you using the picture of this dog. Luckily, I keep receipts very well, and I had the receipt for that picture of the dog that I bought from the original owner that they then purchased the license from, and then started suing everybody on the internet for that was using a copy of that image. Incredibly deceptive business practices.
Oh yes,
and so because I had my license, I have a receipt for purchasing this from the original creator of this picture, and so. That went away, I assume. I just sent the receipts to my client, who was kind of, they send you very threatening emails.
Oh,
letters.
God,
you get a letter. Yeah, saying that you're going to be taken to court. You will be paying, these large amounts of money for a stupid picture of a dog for a veterinary. But imagine if I hadn't saved those receipts. It's just kind of crazy. And then these people are doing it in mass. They're doing it with millions and millions of images if they can get a hold of them. Like whatever they can get, they're training off of this. So it'll be interesting to see. With the Copyright Office saying they can't be copyright, they're going to have to do some special thing to kind of, I think, recover from this and set some standards, because right now it's the Wild West of going into just scanning everything in. One thing I wanted to mention really quickly, Nick, you see in our chat notes here, I on my end I enabled some sort of an AI in Google Docs.
I assume it's Bart, right?
It's something like it, but I can ask it questions. And like this, I asked it a question and it kicked this out in here for me. So they're starting to implement. I don't know if you have it enabled on your end where you can see it, but I've got this little thing and I can say, help me write. And then it'll write stuff. I can ask it questions. I can say, write out a template. So they're starting to building into Google Docs. Office is starting to do it. So
can you ask it what a video game podcast is? I'd be curious to see kind of. I mean,
say what is a video game podcast?
This is the really basic, really simple stuff that is trivial right now and is like, again, the training wheels of it. But its response: a video game podcast is a type of podcast that discusses video games. It can be hosted by one or more people, and they may talk about new releases, upcoming games, or just their favorite games of all time. Some video game podcasts also feature interviews. I feel like is a personal shot at me. With game developers or other industry professionals. Video game podcasts will be a great way to stay up to date with the latest news in gaming world. Or just now, here's the thing: you can very clearly tell when something's written by it because it will repeat the same thing over and over again. Video game podcast, video game podcast, video game podcast, video game podcast. So it has a style of writing.
Yeah.
But if somebody asked me what a video game podcast was, I think this is a better response than me just saying we talk about video games.
Podcast where we talk about video games, where they've pretty much broken down a lot of aspects of our podcast.
Yeah.
Hosted by one or two people. They're discussing maybe their favorite. It's a good description. And I think that for this type of thing, it's going to be a much better case. For me, I found it for documentation. I finishing up writing an API. I gave it a bunch of examples of API queries that you can make on my API. And I said, write the documentation for an API that can receive all of these queries. And it did it pretty close. Of course I went in and tuned it and things like that, but I gave it as many of the variables and things and it documented out pretty nicely. That's the kind of use case that's perfect to get that initial draft that you can then go in and start building upon.
Yeah, I've been very happy with it. I even use it for something. I'll write I'll write like 2 paragraphs or a paragraph and a half, 2 or 3 paragraphs for something, and I'll paste it and I'll say, hey, clean this up. Because maybe the grammar's not exactly the way it should be or whatever. And it does a phenomenal job at just taking things and maybe reformatting sentences so that things flow a little bit smoother. I've been incredibly impressed. And I'm using the free version of ChatGPT. I don't use it all day. I use it maybe a couple of times a week at the most. And I've been very impressed with it. So if you haven't tried any of these things for text, the next time that you need to send out an invite to something, or put together maybe you're hosting an event and you're going to create a Facebook event page for it, and it asks for you for the description, ask one of these things to generate the description for you, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Now I will say this though, Brian, just like any other thing with a machine or a computer, garbage in, garbage out. If you say I'm having a pool party Saturday, create an invite, it's not going to be able to provide any of the useful information, what time, the date. But if you say, I'm having a pool party next Saturday at 2 p.m. and it's BYOB and it's BYOB and this and that and this and that, it will do a phenomenal job with it. The more detail you give it, the better response it will give you. The less detail you give it, the more vague, computer sounding, Amazon A word, Siri, Google Home response that you'll get from it. It does a great job when you give it more and more detail. So, I'm pretty hyped for it. I wish I had something else that I could use it for. Brian, I got to make a personal confession. It's not even a confession. It's it's a fear, and I'm living it right now. Maybe I need some advice. I feel like I am missing the AI train, just like I missed the cryptocurrency train, and I'm terrified, and I don't know what to do, and it's bothering me, but I don't know what to do because I don't have any use cases for it. I just don't have anything else to do with it, but I feel like I'm missing it right now. It's happening in front of me. I could be leading on it, and I'm such a jackass and such a fool that I don't know what to do. So that's just a personal thing I'm struggling with because it's right here and I've got access to it. And I don't know. I'm having some agita about it.
I asked it for kind of do you want to read this here really quick? I gave it a limited amount of information, and I said I don't think it said humorous or something, invitation for a party that's happening at West Park at 3 p.m. and bring your own beer, and it fit in the rest. I said on Friday.
I don't appreciate the fact that you're making me read all of the AI like I'm a computer, but you're invited to a pool party at West Park on Saturday at 3 p.m. Bring your own beer and your favorite bathing suit. Oh, look at this. We will have music, food, and plenty of swimming. Did you have the music and the food in there?
No, it added
so
it itself. I now know. I'm figuring out what I'm going to do for this party.
But safe assumption, it learns a pool party. There's probably going to be music and food. Don't forget your sunscreen, as we'll be out in the sun all day. All right, thanks, Mom. And if you're feeling adventurous, we'll have a water balloon toss.
I didn't say anything about this.
3-legged race. Are we playing strip poker too? I mean, did it not add that to the AI?
Hey, it's planning the whole party for us.
RSVP email protected, so that's where you would put in your own email by Friday.
Put in your
So we'll know how many people to expect. We can't wait to see you there. It's a halfway decent invitation.
It's very well done. And now we're going to have a 3-legged race. We're going to be having a water balloon toss. Like, I didn't even think about it, but it's perfect.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm having agita. I got to get in on the AI thing. I got to figure out what to do. I got to do something.
Well, and that's one thing I know with my job, well, my actual company I work for, my real company I work for, not the one that I'm contracted out to, they're going to really be pushing into AI, I think. So,
it's
hopefully that's good for me. It'll give me a lot of excuses to get into it.
Yeah. I haven't done any AI stuff with my job yet. My job's kind of weird where I talk for a living and I don't really do notes. I more like read stuff and then kind of ad lib. I do bullet points. So I don't really have a use case for it in my job. I need to find a way to do something else with it. But
see, I was using AI in early 2020. So right before COVID hit. I had the client that they have me contracted out for now asked me to implement some AI stuff for them back then. And then COVID hit and it kind of shut down everything for a while. And so we stopped doing it. But that was at the very beginning. And I was doing AI with that early on. So COVID, I think, kind of put a hindrance in a lot of these things, but I think now it's finally just blowing up again. And it's crazy how just in 6 months to a year, how much of a different landscape the whole AI scene has been.
Yeah. So we'll keep talking about it, and if you're using if you're watching on YouTube or maybe you're listening on the podcast, pop into our Discord or leave us a comment. Have you used any of these services like Midjourney or ChatGPT or the OpenAI through ChatGPT or Bard or Bing, any of these other things? And what are you using it for? And what is your response?
Yeah.
I'm very curious what folks are using for it. So
what are we missing? Like what's the cool thing that?
Yeah,
that's the thing is sometimes people are like, "Have you tried this?" I remember in the '90s when someone said, "Hey, have you heard of the internet?" And
hey, loser, like, have you heard of the internet? Yeah,
not really. Someone's like, I signed up for the internet and it is so cool. And it's kind of the same thing right now. Back then, people were like, well, I've heard of the internet, but I've never used it. I've heard of that AI thing, never used it. I feel like it's the exact same moment to where then when I went on the internet, I was like, whoa, this is
Don't say this.
This is different and new.
I'm missing it. It's all
sorry, not to make it worse and rub it in.
I'm missing it. I'm missing it just like I've missed everything else. It's all a failure. Brian,
hopefully soon.
Where do people find you? This is terrible.
All right. Well, you want to find me? You can get me at Boise Computer on Twitter or at Brian Ledger on Gab, Getter, Truth Social, or my blog, biteoftech.com. But most importantly, if you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, which was made by humans, not by AI yet, you can join us on our Discord server. And on there, we got 11 ARC servers running. We got a Conan Exile server running. Also have a show notes channel. So if there's something that you think is important, maybe there's some article on AI you think we should review before the live show, jump there and check it out. Put a link in there and we'll review that before the live show starts. If you want to watch the video forms of the podcast, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, or Rumble. And then the audio forms of the podcast, the lower right-hand side, whatever platform device you want to use. Got a lot of different ways to listen to the podcast. If you are listening, that means the show notes have been uploaded as well, along with the episode, and you can watch the video in there or listen to it right through the player, and there's links for everything that we discussed throughout that show. So it's a perfect way, if you're going to be listening to the show, to have a nice addendum that can give you maybe links to source materials or videos that you weren't able to see because you were listening, but works out really well. If you want to support the show, you can do that through the support menu option up top or infectionpodcast.com/support.
Absolutely. I'm gonna dig through our. I want to get a. Let's get a gaming AI person on the show in the next couple weeks. Yeah. I'll scavenge through Twitter. I'm sure we've probably gotten emailed by one of them with all the press lists we're on. I'd love to chat with somebody and just talk about how it's, especially indie development stuff, and how that's being used. Brian, thanks. Appreciate you getting everything squared away with all your technical issues. And
I'm glad you didn't have to do it with no video.
Yeah. Hopefully you're a real boy for next week. You'll have your gaming computer back, and you can be.
I don't know if they'll have it that fast. Maybe we'll see. If they send me a video or a replacement and just say, hey, send the other one back, then very possible. If they're going to repair it and send it back, we'll see in probably 2 weeks.
Not with that attitude, they're not. So thanks, Brian. We'll catch up with you next week.
Right,
thanks everybody for listening. As always, greatly appreciated. You can check out my completely unscripted, non-AI, human-generated talk show. It's called Wilmington's Morning News. Find it in your favorite podcast apps. You can check it out at nickcraig.com. If you missed any portion of today's show, maybe want to check out some of our show notes, you can head on over to our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.